Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery and watched the stars through the main view screen. His hands were sweaty, and his heart was beating fast. Today was the day humanity would meet the Galactic Empire for the first time. Everything they had worked for over the past 50 years had led to this moment. The Discovery was humanity's best ship. It had taken 12 years to build and contained the most advanced technology Earth could produce. The crew of 200 had trained for 3 years just for this mission. Jake looked around at his officers and felt proud. Dia Lisa Chun sat at the science station checking her xenobiology reports for the 100th time. Commander Rick Torres was reviewing military protocols, even though this was supposed to be a peaceful meeting. Communications Officer Amy Patterson was running final tests on the translation systems. Jake pressed the intercom button. "All hands, this is the captain. We are 30 minutes from the rendezvous point. Today, we represent all of humanity. Remember your training and make Earth proud." The crew had studied everything they could about galactic civilization, but information was limited. Earth's first contact with alien life had happened only 5 years ago when a damaged scout ship crash landed in Nevada. The pilot was a small, gray creature called a Vorkin who worked as a courier for something called the Galactic Empire. Before dying from his injuries, the Vorkin had given them a data chip containing basic information about galactic society. What they learned was both exciting and terrifying. The galaxy was full of life. Over 800 different species belonged to something called the Galactic Empire that had ruled space for thousands of years. The Empire maintained peace through superior technology and military might. They had ships the size of cities and weapons that could destroy entire planets. The Vorkin had told them that first contact protocols required Earth to send representatives to meet with Imperial officials. If the meeting went well, Earth would be welcomed into galactic civilization. If it went badly well, the Vorkin had not wanted to discuss that possibility. "Captain, we have contact," Amy called out from her station. "Long-range sensors are picking up a massive object approaching from the Centauri direction." Jake felt his stomach drop. On the view screen, a ship appeared that defied imagination. It was enormous beyond anything humans had ever built. The Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion looked like a floating city made of dark metal and glowing lights. It was at least 20 kilometers long and probably 5 kilometers wide. The Discovery could fit inside one of its docking bays. "They are hailing." "Use Captain," Amy reported. "Put them on screen." The view screen flickered and showed the interior of what looked like a crystal palace. 2 figures stood in the center of an ornate chamber. The first was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It appeared to be made of living crystal that pulsed with internal light. When it spoke, its voice came through the translators as a series of musical tones. "Greetings, primitive species. I am High Chancellor Zixthara of the Galactic Empire. This is Admiral Kreleneth of the Imperial Fleet." The second figure was more familiar in shape, but no less intimidating. Admiral Kreleneth stood, 7 feet tall, and looked like a cross between a crocodile and a dragon. His scales were dark green, and his eyes glowed yellow. When he moved, Jake could see muscles rippling under armored skin. "We have come to welcome your species into galactic civilization," the Chancellor continued. "Prepare to receive our delegation. Aboard your vessel." Jake swallowed hard. "Of course, Your Excellency. We are honored by your presence." 20 minutes later, Jake stood in the Discovery's main conference room, trying not to shake. His dress uniform felt too tight, and he kept checking his appearance in the polished table surface. Lisa Chun had her presentation ready on humanity's biology and culture. Rick Torres had prepared detailed information about Earth's military capabilities, though Jake hoped they would not need to discuss that topic. Amy Patterson was monitoring the translation systems to make sure there were no communication errors The airlock doors opened with a hiss, and the Imperial delegation entered. Up close, they were even more impressive and intimidating. High Chancellor Zixthara moved like flowing light and seemed to examine everything with sensors Jake could not see. Admiral Krulleneth walked like a predator, and his claws clicked against the metal floor. They were followed by several other beings that Jake assumed were assistants or guards. One looked like a walking tree with glowing fruit. Another appeared to be made of liquid metal that held its shape through some unknown process. A third resembled a giant spider wearing ornate robes. "Your vessel is quite primitive," Admiral Krulleneth observed as he took his seat, "but adequate for a species at your development level." Jake bit back his first response and instead said, "We appreciate your understanding, Admiral. Please allow me to welcome you aboard the Discovery on behalf of all humanity." High Chancellor Zixthara's crystal form pulsed brighter. "Let us proceed to the matter at hand. Your species has achieved interstellar travel and nuclear technology. According to Imperial law, this qualifies you for integration into galactic civilization. We are here to explain the process." Lisa Chun leaned forward eagerly. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. "We are very excited to learn about galactic society, Your Excellency. Earth has always dreamed of joining a larger community of intelligent species." "Excellent," the Chancellor replied. "The Galactic Empire has maintained peace and order across the galaxy for over 4,000 years. We have achieved this through superior organization, military strength, and administrative efficiency. Every species benefits from Imperial protection and guidance." Admiral Krulleneth activated a holographic display that showed star maps and fleet movements. "The Empire currently protects 847 member species across 15,000 inhabited worlds. Our military forces number in the millions of ships. Our technology is advanced beyond your current understanding." Jake felt a chill as the Admiral continued. "Imperial law maintains order through strict hierarchy and clear chains of command. Each species is assigned duties based on their capabilities and development level. Resources are allocated efficiently through central planning. Conflicts are resolved through Imperial mediation or military intervention when necessary." The Chancellor took over the presentation. "Earth will be designated as a Protectorate Class 7 world. This classification brings both privileges and responsibilities. You will receive access to basic Imperial technology, medical advances, and trade opportunities. Your species will contribute to Imperial society through resource quotas, military service, and specialized labor assignments." "Rick!" Torres shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Could you explain what you mean by military service and labor assignments?" Admiral Krulleneth's yellow eyes fixed on Rick. "Your species shows obvious warrior potential. Humans will be assigned to frontier garrison duties, assault troops, and hazardous exploration missions. Your high aggression levels and tolerance for combat make you suitable for dangerous assignments that other species cannot handle." The Chancellor added, "Resource quotas will be established based on Earth's productive capacity. Estimated requirements include 70% of your mineral extraction, 40% of agricultural output, and 30% of manufactured goods. These quotas ensure efficient distribution across Imperial space." Amy Patterson looked confused. "What about Earth's government? How do our existing political systems fit into this arrangement?" "Local governments will be replaced with Imperial administration," the Chancellor explained. "This ensures uniform application of Imperial law and eliminates inefficient political divisions. A planetary governor will be appointed to oversee Earth's integration into Imperial society." Jake felt the room growing cold around him. This was not the welcome into galactic civilization that humanity had hoped for. It sounded more like conquest disguised as cooperation. "What if we need time to consider these arrangements?" Jake asked carefully. Admiral Krullenif leaned forward. Integration is not optional. Species that achieve interstellar capability must join the Empire or be classified as threats to galactic stability. The Empire does not tolerate independent civilizations. High Chancellor Zixthara's crystal form pulsed in what might have been satisfaction. However, we are reasonable beings. We understand that primitive species require time to adjust to civilized society. You have 72 hours to prepare your world for imperial administration. A governor and administrative staff will arrive next week to begin the transition process. Jake looked around the table at his officers. Lisa Chun's face was pale. Rick Torres was gripping his chair so hard his knuckles were white. Amy Patterson was staring at the Imperial delegation with obvious shock. Something inside, Jake snapped. Maybe it was the casual way they discussed enslaving humanity. Maybe it was the assumption that Earth would simply surrender its independence. Maybe it was the realization that the Galactic Empire was nothing more than a protection racket on a cosmic scale. Whatever it was, Jake Morrison began to laugh. It started as a small chuckle, but quickly grew into full-blown laughter. Lisa Chun looked at him in alarm, then caught his eye and began giggling. Rick Torres tried to maintain his composure, but soon was shaking with suppressed mirth. Amy Patterson snorted and then began laughing. High Chancellor Zixthara's crystalline form flickered rapidly as the humans continued laughing. The light patterns inside her body shifted to colors that the translation system could not interpret. Admiral Krullenif's claws extended slightly, and his yellow eyes grew brighter with what could only be anger or confusion. Dr. Lisa Chun was wiping tears from her eyes while trying to catch her breath. Commander Rick Torres was slapping the table and shaking his head in amazement. Amy Patterson kept making small snorting sounds every time she tried to stop laughing. Captain Jake Morrison was leaning back in his chair with the biggest grin anyone had ever seen. The Imperial delegation exchanged looks that clearly meant they had never encountered anything like this in their thousands of years of galactic diplomacy. The tree-like being's glowing fruit dimmed noticeably. The liquid metal creature seemed to ripple with uncertainty. The giant spider pulled its robes closer around its body. Admiral Krullenif was the first to break the silence. His voice came through the translator as a low growl that made the conference room walls vibrate. You find Imperial generosity amusing. Primitive mammals? Jake wiped his eyes and tried to compose himself, but he kept chuckling. Oh, sorry, Admiral. It's not that we don't appreciate the offer. It's just that we've been through this before, you know. The Chancellor's crystal form pulsed, with what the humans were starting to recognize as confusion. Explain this statement. Your species has never encountered galactic civilization before today. Lisa Chun pulled up Earth's historical database on the conference room screen. Well, that's true, Your Excellency, but we've had plenty of practice with empires here on Earth. See, the thing is, we've heard variations of this exact speech many times before. She began clicking through historical records, while the Imperial delegation watched in growing bewilderment. First came images of Roman legions marching across Europe. The Romans said they were bringing civilization and order to barbaric tribes. They demanded tribute labor and military service in exchange for protection and Roman law. Next appeared British colonial officials meeting with tribal leaders in India and Africa. The British Empire claimed they were spreading civilization and good government to primitive peoples. They took resources, imposed their laws, and recruited local populations for military service. Then came footage of Nazi officials explaining their new order for Europe. These guys said they were creating a 1,000-year empire that would bring peace and efficiency to chaotic democratic governments. They also had very specific ideas about who should do what jobs. Rick Torres leaned forward with a wide smile. And let's not forget the Soviet Union. They promised to liberate working people everywhere and create a perfect socialist society. All it cost was complete surrender of individual freedom and absolute obedience to the state. Amy Patterson added her own examples. Don't forget the various colonial powers in the Americas. They all claim to be bringing civilization, religion, and better government to savage lands. Funny how civilization always seemed to involve mining rights and forced labor. Admiral Krolinoth's scales darkened to almost black. These comparisons are insulting and inappropriate. The Galactic Empire has maintained stability across thousands of worlds for millennia. We are not some primitive planetary conquest force. Jake stood up and walked to the view screen where images of Earth's empires continued cycling. Admiral, with all due respect, that's exactly what every empire says. They all claim to be different. They all insist they're bringing order and civilization to chaos and barbarism. They all promise that their rule is for the greater good. He turned back to face the Imperial delegation. But here's the thing we learned from all those previous empires. They all had one thing in common, which is, the Chancellor asked her crystal form now pulsing with rapid orange patterns. They all fell, Lisa-chan said simply. Every single one. Rome lasted about 500 years, depending on how you count. The British Empire maybe 300. The Nazis made it 12 years. The Soviet Union got 70 before it collapsed. Rick Torres pulled up military history files. Want to know how they fell, Admiral? People got tired of being told what to do by foreigners. They started fighting back. Some used politics, some used economics, and some used good old-fashioned warfare. But they all had one thing in common. What? Admiral Krolinoth asked, despite himself. They refused to stay conquered, Amy Patterson said. Humans have this really annoying habit of not knowing when they're beaten. We keep fighting even when it seems hopeless, especially when someone tries to tell us we don't have a choice. High Chancellor Zixthara's form shifted to a cold blue color. Your historical examples are irrelevant. Those were conflicts between members of the same species on a single world. The Galactic Empire spans thousands of worlds and hundreds of species. Our military technology is beyond your comprehension. Resistance is not possible. Jake returned to his seat and looked directly at the Chancellor. Your Excellency, can you tell me how many species have tried to resist Imperial rule over the past 4,000 years? Several dozen initially, the Chancellor replied. All were successfully integrated after brief conflicts. There have been no significant resistance movements in over 2 millennia. That's interesting, Lisa-chan said. So what happened to the species that resisted? Did they all just give up? Admiral Krolinoth's expression suggested this was not a topic he enjoyed discussing. Resistant species were relocated to more suitable worlds where they could contribute effectively to Imperial society. Some required more extensive re-education than others. The humans exchanged glances. Rick Torres spoke first. Re-education. That's a nice way of putting it. What exactly does that involve? Resistant populations are separated from their original cultural influences, the Chancellor explained. They receive proper Imperial education about their role in galactic society. Their children are raised in Imperial institutions to ensure proper integration. Amy Patterson felt her stomach turn cold. You're talking about cultural genocide. Breaking up families, removing children from their parents, destroying everything that makes a species unique. We prefer the term social optimization, Admiral Krolinoth said. Primitive cultural practices that interfere with Imperial efficiency must be eliminated. This is for the greater good of galactic civilization. Jake stood up again, and this time he was not smiling. Admiral, let me make sure I understand this correctly. Any species that refuses to hand over their children, their resources, and their freedom gets conquered, enslaved, and culturally destroyed. Is that about right? You oversimplify the process. the Chancellor said. Integration is designed to benefit all parties. Resistant species eventually recognize the advantages of Imperial membership after you've destroyed everything they cared about. Lisa Chun said quietly. Rick Torres activated his own display showing Earth's military academies, training facilities, and war colleges. Your Excellency, I think there's something you should understand about humans. We've been fighting each other for our entire recorded history. We've gotten very good at it. The display showed footage from human conflicts. Infantry moving through urban environments, pilots engaging in aerial combat, naval vessels fighting in storm conditions, soldiers operating in deserts, jungles, mountains, and Arctic conditions. These are just conflicts between human factions, Admiral Krellanoth observed. Primitive weapons and tactics. Amy Patterson smiled for the first time since the conversation had turned serious. Admiral, those primitive weapons include nuclear bombs that can destroy entire cities. Those primitive tactics include guerrilla warfare that brought down empires. Those primitive soldiers include people who fought in conditions that would kill most species you've probably encountered. Jake pulled up more recent footage showing human space operations. We've also been preparing for this meeting for 5 years. We've studied every bit of information we could find about galactic civilization, Imperial technology, and military doctrine. And what did you learn? The Chancellor asked. That you've been fighting the same way for thousands of years. Rick Torres replied. Big ships, heavy armor, overwhelming firepower, and intimidation. It works great against species that think the same way you do. Lisa Chun added, but we've been fighting asymmetric warfare for centuries. We know how to fight enemies who are bigger, stronger, and better equipped than we are. We've had lots of practice. Admiral Krellanoth leaned forward menacingly. Are you threatening the Galactic Empire? Jake held up his hands peacefully. Not at all, Admiral. We're just explaining why your integration offer isn't going to work. You? See, humans have this character flaw. We really don't like being told what to do, especially by people we don't know and didn't choose. Your preferences are irrelevant, the Chancellor stated. Integration will proceed according to Imperial law. Amy Patterson looked at her captain. Sir, should I tell them about the message we sent to Earth before this meeting? Jake nodded. Go. Ahead, Amy. She turned to face the Imperial delegation. Before we left Earth, we sent a complete report to our government about this meeting. If we don't return safely, or if we return with bad news, Earth will assume that first contact has failed. What does this mean? Admiral Krellanoth asked. Rick Torres smiled grimly. It means, Admiral, that Earth is already preparing for war. Our shipyards are working around the clock. Our military news of the humans' unprecedented response spread through Imperial communication networks faster than High Chancellor Zix Thara could control. Within hours of the meeting, aboard the Discovery, every major world in the Empire had heard about the species that laughed at Imperial authority. The story grew with each telling until it reached the Galactic Council, chambers on Terminus Prime. The emergency session was called by Senator Vexilon of the Hive Worlds, a nervous insectoid whose species had been Imperial members for over 3,000 years. He stood before the assembled representatives waving his forearms in agitation, while his translator struggled to keep up with his rapid clicking speech. Fellow senators, we face an unprecedented crisis. A primitive species has openly rejected Imperial integration and threatened military resistance. If we do not respond decisively, other worlds may begin questioning Imperial authority. Senator Klumath of the Crystal Confederacy pulsed with skeptical blue light. One backward planet with primitive technology poses no real threat to the Empire. Perhaps we are overreacting to what amounts to childish defiance. Admiral Torgash of the War Council disagreed strongly. His massive bulk filled the speaker's platform as he addressed the assembly. Senators, I have reviewed the tactical reports from the Discovery meeting. These humans display military knowledge and strategic thinking that surpasses most Imperial member species. They should not be underestimated. While the Galactic Council debated what to do about the human problem, Earth was already taking action. President Martinez sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by military advisors, scientists, and intelligence officials. The reports from Captain Morrison's mission had arrived 3 days earlier, and the response was immediate. "Ladies and gentlemen," the president began, "we always knew this day might come. Our contingency plans are now in effect. General Carter, what is the status of Operation Starfall?" General Sarah Carter activated the main display showing Earth's orbital installations and deep space monitoring stations. "Mr. President, all systems are operational. Our shipyards are producing vessels at maximum capacity. We have 47 armed ships ready for deployment, with 12 more completing construction each week." Dr. Robert Kim from the Technology Development Division added his report. "We have successfully reverse-engineered significant portions of the Vorkan scout ship technology. Our new weapon systems are ready for field testing. More importantly, we have developed countermeasures against Imperial shielding and targeting systems." CIA Director Helen Ross provided intelligence updates. "Our analysis of Imperial military doctrine shows they rely heavily on overwhelming force and technological superiority. They have not faced organized resistance in over 2 millennia. Their tactics are predictable, and their response patterns follow rigid protocols." President Martinez nodded grimly. "What about our diplomatic options?" Secretary of State David Chun looked uncomfortable. "Sir, based on Captain Morrison's report, diplomacy in the traditional sense may not be possible. The Empire views integration as mandatory and considers independent civilizations to be threats. Then we proceed with alternative diplomatic strategies," the president decided. "Dr. Kim, how soon can we begin Phase 2? The first trade missions can launch within the week, sir. We have identified 17 Imperial worlds that might be receptive to our approach." What the Empire did not expect was that humans would completely ignore Imperial protocols and begin conducting their own unauthorized diplomacy. While High Chancellor Zixthara and the Galactic Council continued debating how to handle the Earth, problem human ships were already spreading throughout Imperial space. The first mission launched from Luna Base under the command of Captain Ben Rodriguez aboard the cargo vessel Free Trader. Ben was a former merchant marine who had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a one-way mission. His crew of 20 included engineers, linguists, and economists who shared his willingness to take enormous risks for potentially enormous rewards. Their destination was Aquatica Prime, a water world in the Centauri sector inhabited by the dolphin. Like Seatians, the Seatians had been Imperial subjects for 800 years and were known for their advanced underwater cities and their skill at aquaculture. They were also known for paying enormous Imperial taxes on their food exports. Ben's ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Aquatica system and immediately began broadcasting on civilian frequencies. "Aquatica Prime, this is Captain Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Free Trader, requesting permission for peaceful trade discussions." The response came from Aquatica Traffic Control, spoken in the clicking whistles of Seatian language. "Unknown vessel, you are not listed in Imperial shipping schedules. State your business and Imperial authorization codes." "Traffic Control, we are representatives of humanity seeking direct trade relations with the Seatian people. We do not have Imperial authorization because Earth is not currently an Imperial member world." There was a long pause before Traffic Control responded. "Captain Rodriguez, please maintain your current position. We are contacting Imperial authorities." Ben smiled at his communications officer, Lisa Park. "Tell them we'll be happy to wait, but we'd also like to speak directly with Seatian trade representatives if possible. We have some interesting proposals." That might benefit everyone involved. On Aquatica Prime, the news of an unauthorized alien ship caused immediate confusion. Pod leader Silwesh of the Third Deep City had never heard of humans, but the mention of trade benefits caught his attention. The Cetians had been struggling under imperial taxation for decades, and any opportunity to improve their economic situation was worth investigating. Against imperial regulations, Silwesh authorized a small delegation to meet with the human ship. What they found changed everything the Cetians thought they knew about galactic trade. Captain Rodriguez and his team presented the Cetians with an offer that seemed too good to be true. Earth would provide advanced water purification technology, pharmaceutical supplies, and manufactured goods in exchange for Aquatica's specialized food products and rare deep-sea minerals. The prices were 30% below what the Cetians paid imperial suppliers, and the technology was superior to anything they had seen. How is this possible? Silwesh asked through his translator. Imperial prices are fixed by the Trade Council. No one can undercut imperial suppliers. Lisa Park smiled. Pod leader, the Empire sets those prices to maintain their profit margins and fund their bureaucracy. Earth doesn't have those overhead costs. We can afford to charge fair market prices because we're not supporting a galactic government. The Cetian delegation was fascinated but nervous. What about imperial trade regulations? We are required to conduct all external trade through imperial channels. Ben Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. Pod leader, what if I told you there was a way to conduct this trade without imperial oversight? I would say that sounds illegal and dangerous. It would definitely be against imperial law, Ben admitted. But here's the thing. Imperial law only applies to imperial member worlds. Earth isn't a member, so we're not bound by imperial trade regulations. The Cetians looked confused. But surely the Empire will not allow unauthorized trade in imperial space. They can try to stop us, Lisa Park said. But they would have to catch us first. Human ships are fast, and we're very good at avoiding imperial patrols. Over the next 6 hours, the human team explained their proposal in detail. They would establish regular trade runs between Earth and Aquatica, using small, fast ships that could avoid imperial detection. The Cetians would benefit from better prices and superior technology. Earth would gain access to Aquatica's unique products and establish a foothold in imperial space. The risks were enormous for both sides. If caught, the Cetians could face severe imperial punishment. The humans were operating in violation of every galactic law that existed. But the potential benefits were equally enormous. Silwesh made the decision that would change his world forever. Captain Rodriguez, we accept your proposal. When can we begin? Similar scenes were playing out across imperial space, as human trade missions contacted dozens of different species. Captain Katie Walsh negotiated deals with the insectoid hive workers of Forge Prime, offering them manufacturing technology that doubled their production capacity. Commander Tony Garcia established trade relations with the plant-like Chlorophyll Collective, providing them with advanced agricultural techniques. Each contact followed the same pattern. Human ships would appear, without imperial authorization, offer superior products at lower prices, and disappear before imperial forces could respond. The aliens they contacted were initially suspicious, but quickly became enthusiastic once they realized the benefits. On Terminus Prime, High Chancellor Zix Thara was receiving increasingly alarming reports from across the Empire. Unauthorized human ships were conducting illegal trade throughout imperial space. Even worse, some imperial member species were actually cooperating with these criminal activities. Admiral Krellineth, she commanded, dispatch patrol fleets to intercept these human vessels. They must be stopped before this infection spreads further. Admiral Krellineth reviewed the tactical reports with growing frustration. Chancellor, the human ships are extremely difficult to track. They use small fast. High Chancellor Zixthara had reached the end of her patience. For 3 months, human traders had operated freely in imperial space, undermining centuries of carefully maintained economic control. Tax revenues were falling. Imperial authority was being questioned, and worst of all, other species were beginning to believe they had choices. The emergency meeting of the War Council took place deep within the Imperial Palace on Terminus Prime. Admiral Krelinoth stood before a holographic display, showing the current military situation while other high-ranking officers waited for orders. Chancellor, the situation has become intolerable, Admiral Krelinoth reported. Human trade missions are now operating on over 60 worlds. Imperial member species are openly defying trade regulations. Some systems are refusing to meet their tax obligations. What do our intelligence services tell us about Earth's military capabilities? The Chancellor asked. General Voxtar of Imperial Intelligence activated his own display. Our analysis suggests Earth has approximately 100 combat-capable vessels. Their technology is primitive, but they appear to have made improvements based on captured Imperial equipment. They pose no serious threat to the Imperial fleet. Admiral Krelinoth agreed. Chancellor I recommended immediate military action. A demonstration of Imperial power will end this rebellion before it spreads further. I propose taking a third battle, fleet to Earth orbit and destroying several human cities. The survivors will quickly agree to proper Imperial integration. The Chancellor's crystal form pulsed with satisfied light. Excellent, Admiral. How many ships will you require? 200. Vessels should be more than adequate, Chancellor. The humans have never faced proper Imperial military power. They will surrender immediately when they see our strength. Proceed with the operation, Admiral. Make it clear to the galaxy that defying the Empire has consequences. Admiral Krelinoth left the meeting feeling confident that the human problem would be solved within days. The Third Battle Fleet was one of the Empire's finest formations, with ships that had served for centuries without defeat. He personally would command the operation from his flagship, the Inevitable Victory. 3 days later, the Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Krelinoth stood on his command bridge, looking at the primitive blue-green world that had caused so much trouble. Soon it would serve as an example to any other species that might consider challenging Imperial authority. Admiral, we are detecting multiple human vessels approaching our position, reported the sensor officer. Admiral Krelinoth looked at the tactical display and almost laughed. A single human ship was moving toward his fleet of 200 vessels. The ship was barely 1/10 the size of an Imperial destroyer and appeared to be alone. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Put it on the main screen. The view screen flickered to show the bridge of what was obviously a human warship. A young human male in a blue uniform sat in the command chair, looking remarkably calm, considering he was facing the most powerful military force his species had ever encountered. This is I, Lieutenant Commander Dan Mitchell, aboard the Earth Space. Vessel Defiance, the human said. You are currently in violation of Earth territorial space. Please withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Krelinoth could not believe what he was hearing. One small ship against 200 Imperial vessels, and this human was issuing ultimatums. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. Or be destroyed, the Admiral responded. Dan Mitchell looked directly into the camera and smiled. Yeah, that's going to be a no from me, Admiral. Fair warning, though, Earth really doesn't like uninvited guests with big guns. You are outnumbered 200 to 1, Admiral Krelinoth snarled. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Admiral, I appreciate the concern, but you seem to have missed something important, Dan replied. You're not fighting one ship. You're fighting Earth. Before Admiral Krullenov could respond, his sensor officer called out in alarm. "Admiral, we have multiple contacts appearing throughout the system. Hundreds of small vessels are emerging from asteroid fields, planetary rings, and deep space positions." The tactical display exploded with red warning symbols as human ships appeared from every direction. They had been hiding throughout the solar system, waiting for the Imperial fleet to commit to an attack position. "How many ships?" Admiral Krullenov demanded. "Over 400 contacts, Admiral. They're moving to surround our formation." Admiral Krullenov felt the first stirring of concern, but quickly dismissed it. Even 400 primitive ships could not match Imperial firepower and technology. All vessels prepare for battle. Target the largest human ships first. What happened next would be studied in military academies throughout the galaxy for centuries. The Imperial fleet had expected a conventional battle with ships, forming battle lines and exchanging fire until one side was destroyed. That was how every space battle in galactic history had been fought. The humans had other ideas. Instead of forming neat battle formations, the human ships swarmed the Imperial fleet like angry hornets. They were fast, incredibly maneuverable, and equipped with weapons that seemed designed specifically to counter Imperial defenses. The first Imperial ship to die was the destroyer Eternal Strength. A group of small human fighters hit it with coordinated strikes that overloaded its shields and then pumped railgun rounds directly into its hull. The massive ship broke apart in less than 30 seconds. "Impossible," Admiral Krullenov muttered. "Our shields are impenetrable to primitive weapons." His tactical officer looked terrified. "Admiral, the humans appear to be using some kind of adaptive targeting system. Their weapons are adjusting to counter our defensive frequencies." The battle quickly turned into a nightmare for the Imperial forces. Human ships refused to engage in predictable patterns. They used hit-and-run tactics, electronic warfare, and coordinated swarm attacks that overwhelmed individual Imperial vessels. Worse, they seemed to be targeting command and control systems rather than trying to destroy ships outright. Within 10 minutes, half the Imperial fleet was blind, deaf, and unable to coordinate with other vessels. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems failed. Others fired on their own forces when their targeting computers were compromised by human cyber attacks. Admiral Krullenov watched his formation disintegrate with growing horror. "Communications, get me a channel to the human commander." "Sir, our communications are being jammed. We're also receiving massive data streams that are overloading our computer systems." On the screen, Admiral Krullenov could see human pilots joking with each other on open channels. One pilot was singing an ancient Earth song while destroying an Imperial cruiser. Another was making references to something called movies while leading a squadron through an Imperial formation. The humans were not just winning, they were having fun doing it. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "the human ships are broadcasting some kind of entertainment program on all frequencies." "What kind of program?" "It appears to be comedy, sir. They're making jokes about our fleet movements and tactical decisions." Admiral Krullenov realized with growing panic that his forces were not just being defeated, they were being humiliated. The humans were treating the mighty Imperial fleet like an amusing diversion. The final blow came when human hackers managed to penetrate the inevitable victory's computer systems. Suddenly, every screen on the bridge was displaying embarrassing personal messages from Admiral Krullenov's private files. His love letters to a Centaurian dancer were being broadcast across all Imperial frequencies, along with his secret poetry and his collection of romantic music. "Sir, we need to retreat," his tactical officer urged. "We've lost over half our ships, and the humans show no signs of slowing down." Admiral Krullenov tried to give the retreat order, but discovered that his ship's navigation systems had been reprogrammed by human cyber warfare specialists. instead of jumping to hyperspace, the inevitable victory, began broadcasting the Admiral's personal diary entries in his own voice. The few Imperial ships that managed to escape the battle limped back to Imperial space, carrying news of the most humiliating defeat in galactic military history. Not only had the humans won, they had made the Imperial fleet look like complete fools in the process. Dan Mitchell opened a channel to the retreating Imperial ships. "Hey, Admiral, thanks for stopping by. Tell your boss that Earth is still not interested in joining the Empire. Oh, and next time, you might want to bring more ships." The news of the Battle of Earth spread across the galaxy faster than Imperial censors could suppress it. Every species that had spent centuries fearing Imperial military might suddenly realize that the Empire could be beaten. More importantly, they learned that the humans had won by being smarter, faster, and more creative than their enemies. On Aquatica, Prime Pod leader Silwesh called an emergency meeting of the Setian Council. "Friends, we have received confirmation that the human fleet has defeated an Imperial battle group. The time has come to choose sides." Similar meetings were taking place on dozens of worlds throughout Imperial space. Species that had never dared to question Imperial authority were suddenly asking themselves if they really needed Imperial protection. After all, High Chancellor Zix Thara received the reports of the battle while meeting with the Galactic Council. Her crystal form flickered with colors that indicated 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the Galactic Empire was falling apart faster than High Chancellor Zix Thara could hold it together. Over 300 species had officially joined humanity's Free Trade Alliance, while dozens more were secretly negotiating to switch sides. Imperial tax revenue had collapsed to less than 40% of previous levels, and entire sectors were in open rebellion. The final emergency session of the Galactic Council took place in a half-empty chamber, as many member species had simply stopped sending representatives. Those who remained looked nervous and defeated as they listened to increasingly desperate reports from Imperial officials. "Chancellor," announced General Voxtar, "we have confirmed that the Hive Worlds have declared independence. The Crystal Confederacy has joined the Human Alliance. Even the warrior clans of Rigel are refusing to answer Imperial mobilization orders." High Chancellor Zix Thara's crystal form pulsed with desperate orange light. "How many loyal worlds remain under Imperial control?" "Approximately 200 systems, Chancellor. However, many of those are only nominally loyal and could switch sides at any moment." Admiral Krullenith stood up slowly, still bearing the shame of his defeat at Earth. "Chancellor, I request permission to implement the final protocol." The remaining council members fell silent. The final protocol had been created thousands of years ago as the Empire's ultimate weapon, but had never been used. It called for gathering every remaining loyal ship into a single, massive fleet that would crush the rebellion through overwhelming force. "Admiral, how many vessels can we assemble?" the Chancellor asked. "Every ship from every loyal world, Chancellor. Current estimates suggest we can field over 10,000 vessels, representing 200 different species. It will be the largest military force in galactic history." Senator Clumoth of the Crystal Confederacy had remained loyal despite pressure from his own people. "Admiral, what makes you believe this fleet will succeed where others have failed?" "Senator, the humans have never faced our full military might. They defeated a single battle group through surprise and unconventional tactics. Against 10,000 ships, their advantages become meaningless." The Chancellor made her decision. "Admiral, you have authorization to proceed. Gather every loyal ship and prepare for the final assault on the human rebellion." What followed was the largest military mobilization in galactic history. Ships from across Imperial space converged on the Terminus system, forming a fleet so massive it created its own gravitational effects. Veterans who had served for centuries found themselves fighting alongside species they had never encountered. The combined force represented the last hope of Imperial civilization. On Earth, President Martinez received intelligence reports about the Imperial buildup from Commander Susan Blake, who had become Earth's top intelligence officer through her network of alien contacts. Mr. President, our sources confirm that the Empire is assembling everything they have left. Over 10,000 ships from 200 species. They're calling it the Great Convergence, and they plan to use it to crush the Alliance once and for all. President Martinez looked tired after months of coordinating humanity's expanding role in galactic politics. Susan, what does Admiral Morrison think about our chances? Jake Morrison had been promoted to Admiral of the Alliance fleet after proving his diplomatic and military skills during the crisis. He joined the meeting via secure transmission from the Alliance headquarters on Luna Base. Mr. President, the Empire just made the biggest strategic mistake in galactic history. They've gathered every loyal fleet in one place. How is that a mistake? Admiral? Because, sir, it gives us a target-rich environment. Instead of hunting down Imperial forces across the galaxy, we can deal with all of them at once. Susan Blake activated a holographic display showing the Terminus system. Admiral, our intelligence suggests they're planning a conventional engagement. Massive formations slugging it out until one side is destroyed. Admiral Morrison smiled. Susan, the Empire still doesn't understand how humans fight. They think bigger is always better. We're about to teach them otherwise. The final battle of the Galactic Civil War began when the massive Imperial fleet entered the Terminus system, expecting to find human and Alliance forces waiting in defensive positions. Instead, they found something completely unexpected. Admiral Morrison's fleet included not just human and Alliance ships, but also a secret weapon that had taken months to prepare. Mixed in with the obvious human vessels were dozens of captured Imperial ships that had been retrofitted and reprogrammed by human technicians. The battle opened with confusion spreading through Imperial ranks as their own ships suddenly turned their weapons on the fleet. Captain Greg Chun and his team of cyber warfare specialists had spent months preparing for this moment by installing hidden programs in every piece of Imperial technology they could access. Admiral, reported the Imperial sensor officer aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion, our own ships are firing on us. Half the fleet appears to be compromised. Fleet Admiral Morgoth could not understand what he was seeing. Imperial ships were destroying each other, while human vessels darted between the formations like sharks among confused fish. How is this possible? He demanded. Before anyone could answer, every ship in the system received the same transmission. It appeared on every screen in every language, spoken by every species present. The broadcast featured a human male sitting behind a desk with the words "Galactic Comedy Hour" displayed behind him. "Good evening, everyone," the human began. "Welcome to the final episode of our documentary series, The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire. Tonight we present the concluding chapter, a comedy in 5 acts. What followed was the most devastating propaganda broadcast in military history. The humans had created a complete documentary about the Empire's collapse, featuring interviews with defecting Imperial officials, footage of Imperial defeats, and commentary from human comedians, who treated the entire situation as an elaborate joke. The documentary revealed embarrassing truths that Imperial censors had hidden for centuries. The Empire's advanced technology was mostly stolen from conquered species. Their military tactics had not evolved in thousands of years because no one had dared to challenge them. Their bureaucracy was so corrupt and inefficient that most Imperial officials had no idea what was actually happening in their territories. The most damaging segment featured secretly recorded conversations between High Chancellor Zix Thara and other Imperial leaders. In these recordings, they admitted that Imperial rule was based entirely on fear and intimidation rather than actual superiority. The secret of Imperial success, the Chancellor could be heard saying, is making sure no one realizes how weak we actually are. Our technology is outdated, our military is overconfident, and our economy depends entirely on exploiting others. As Imperial crews throughout the fleet watched their entire civilization being exposed as a fraud, something unprecedented happened. They began laughing at themselves. The documentary was followed by live commentary from Admiral Morrison, who addressed the Imperial fleet directly. Attention, Imperial forces. You have been lied to by your leaders for thousands of years. The Empire is not invincible. It is not superior. It is not even competent. He gestured to the tactical display, showing the chaos of the battle. Look around you. Your own ships are destroying each other because your leaders never bothered to secure their computer systems. Your formations are falling apart because your tactics are centuries out of date. Your cause is hopeless because it was never worth fighting for in the first place. The broadcast concluded with an offer that shattered what remained of Imperial resistance. Any Imperial crew that wants to stop fighting can simply shut down their weapons and join the Alliance. No punishment, no consequences, just freedom to choose your own future. Within minutes, Imperial ships throughout the system began powering down their weapons and broadcasting surrender signals. Entire squadrons switched sides as crews realized they had been fighting to preserve a system that cared nothing for their welfare. Admiral Morgoth watched his fleet disintegrate around him as ship after ship abandoned the Imperial cause. His own crew was arguing among themselves about whether to continue fighting or join the rebellion. The final blow came when High Chancellor Zixthara herself appeared on the communication system. She had been trying to maintain control from Terminus Prime, but the human cyber warfare specialists had compromised the Imperial communication network. This is Chancellor Zixthara to all Imperial forces. Her voice crackled with static and desperation. I order you to continue fighting. The Empire must not fall. Her transmission was immediately followed by another broadcast featuring the Chancellor's private files, including her personal diary entries, admission that she had never believed in Imperial ideology, and her secret plans to flee to a hidden world if the war went badly. The last Imperial resistance crumbled as crews realized their own leaders had no faith in the cause they were dying for. Admiral Morgoth made the final surrender on behalf of all remaining Imperial forces. Human Admiral, this is Fleet Admiral Morgoth. The Imperial fleet surrenders unconditionally. Jake Morrison accepted the surrender with the same casual attitude humans had shown throughout the conf.